You can let it go. Take a step back. Let the feeling flow. Look around.
Hello, everyone. My name is Kalyce Carter. I am the accessibility coordinator here at Xenia Concerts, and I am very, very, very excited to start one of our first expert interviews with somebody that I'm very, very excited to interview, and also someone that I've had the major pleasure and honor of being able to work with for over a year now, which feels really, really great. Before we get into things, I'm going to start with a visual description of myself. So, I am a darker skinned Black person. I have short, coily dark hair. I'm wearing an all black t-shirt with a gold chain. I have a pair of black headphones on that sort of melt into the color of my hair. And behind me is a white wall with a couple of strings of plants just behind me as well. And just off to the side of me, I don't know if that's my right or my left, but there is a yellow pillow. And I am also conducting this interview from Treaty 13 land, specifically to Toronto. And I'm very, very honored to be able to do this work on this land. And I'm very, very grateful. So, I will ask our guest, Vanessa, to tell us a bit more about herself, about the work that she's doing, give a bit of a description, and let y'all know which treaty lens and what lens she is going to be interviewing us and sharing her brilliance with us from today.
Hi, so like Lise mentioned, my name is Vanessa. I am currently on the lands of the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, Wendake-Nyunwetsiow, and the Mississauga. I am wearing a shirt with horizontal stripes with pink, blue, black. And there's a lamp over here on my left side. And I'm also kind of sitting in front of a television with a TV stand. There's some plants behind me and also some paintings. Yeah. I'm really excited to be here too. And it's again been such a joy and a pleasure to be working with Xenia Concerts and with Kalyce. And yeah, I'm just really excited for this interview.
So just for a bit more context, folks, Vanessa is one of the co-designers that is consulting, doing so much generous work, and supporting us a lot in our accessibility accelerator project that is taking place. It got started in October of 2023. And all of our co-designers have been doing a lot of work within disability justice, within accessibility, and within the arts, and that's a major intersection for all of them. Today, during our interview, we're going to have a really wonderful conversation about arts education, accessibility, disability justice, where are we at now, where can we go in the future, and also what can our imagination invite in for us by virtue of a conversation about accessibility and how are we understanding accessibility. But before I start asking all of my questions, Vanessa, would you mind sharing a bit about the work that you do, and telling us a bit about like how you arrived at this work?
For sure. I got my undergraduate degree at the University of Toronto in music education. I play the trombone and I also teach piano. Um, I felt like all my life, like there was something like different about me, or like I wasn't really fitting in, or like people weren't experiencing life the same way that I was. And then in my fourth year of university, I got diagnosed with ADHD and anxiety, and that really explained so much for me. And so right now I'm doing my Master of Teaching at the Ontario Institute for Studies in Education, aka OISE, also at U of T. And my major research paper will be on accessibility and in the arts and how we can cater to those who are neurodiverse or disabled. And so it really aligns with what Xenia is doing. So I'm really excited about that. In the past, I've worked with the University of Toronto Scarborough. I've also worked with the Toronto Symphony Orchestra as their education assistant. Um, and during my role at that organization, I wrote some program notes for their relaxed concert series. So just letting the audience members know what kind of loud sounds or loud noises will be coming from the orchestra, and also letting them know like how many people will be on stage and kind of the vibe and ambiance of what was going on in that moment. Um, During my undergraduate degree, I also did a lot of advocacy work around gender-based violence, and I led a tri-campus protest called like a tri-campus initiative called Students for Survivors. Um, and that was a really great way of addressing some of the gender-based violence present in music, and again, some of the systemic inequalities that uh, lead that are related in the field of disability and accessibility, and everything is just like interconnected, and intersectionality, all that good stuff.
From your intro, Vanessa, something that like really resonated with me, but also like is of course understandable when you expressed that when you explained and talked about um getting your diagnosis for ADHD and anxiety, and how all of a sudden that sort of thing started to make a bit more sense. I'm wondering for you, from your experience, like what would be some of the most critical gaps in accessibility and arts education today? And like what are some like close and quick immediate changes that would have the greatest impact?
I think, first of all, we could all just be kinder to each other and give each other a little bit more grace. Um, there's so many things that can be like limiting factors to
Mhm.
different people. For example, in music, something that I experienced a lot was like this expectation that you're practicing for this many hours a day, or that you even have a space to practice. Like, I live in an apartment right now, and it's been really hard to like find time to practice and like negotiate with my neighbors and do all that stuff, even though like playing trombone is my job, and like I have gigs that I need to practice for and all that. So even the assumption that people have a space to practice, the
Mm.
assumption that people even have access to an instrument, the assumption that people have taken lessons, uh, and all of that. So especially the access to instruments. I used to teach piano, and I used to teach in a studio, and then obviously at the studio we would have a piano and everything was good. And then I switched to teaching in people's homes, and then
Yeah.
suddenly like the access to instruments was totally different. I always let my students know like you don't need a fancy piano. I like until I was like 10 or 11, I didn't even have a piano that was like touch sensitive, so like no matter how hard or soft you play, it'd still be the same volume, which is like
Mm.
if you're a pianist, that's a disaster. But
It
like,
sounds like it.
yeah, but honestly, if you're younger and you're just a beginner, that's totally fine. Like, it's okay. You don't need like anything fancy
Mm.
for your lessons. But anyway, as I was going to these different homes, like I could see that, yeah, there was just like a huge difference in like the access to instruments.
What you've named are like very material barriers to accessibility that oftentimes just like either go completely unnoticed or people think it's just a barrier that someone can just like get over on their own, not realizing that like, and for context, I'm not a musician. I love music, but I'm not a musician. But even thinking about the cost of lessons, right? That can
Mhm.
potentially be a barrier for people who may want to, for kids who may want to get into music, but simply because they can't afford the lessons, that could be an issue. Issues around like, can you afford the instrument and also what quality of instrument you're getting? These are huge issues that like don't get talked about. And unfortunately, from my point of view, it oftentimes seems as though like it's just an expectation that you either do it or you can't compete. And that is inherently inaccessible, right?
Yeah, for sure. Like, there's kind of this notion that like you should be able to do everything you can to like make this happen, whereas like obviously that's not possible for everyone. And it is really important that we keep that in mind, like even when you're doing music quote unquote seriously, or you're kind of coming at this as a beginner, it's important
Mhm.
to understand that we're all different people with different circumstances.
accessibility and intersectionality, this is a huge example. Like you sort of alluded to it earlier, that like your focus on accessibility brought you to a lot of other areas of that would be considered under the equity umbrella. But specifically with this, there's a way that like the inaccessibility of a lot of arts education programs is very intersectional. So not only is it inaccessible on the grounds of disability, but also when it comes to things like class as well. And that is something that is lost on people, unfortunately, or it's forgotten that class and disability are really, really deeply connected.
For sure, like in especially in classical music, like there's so much
Yeah.
elitism and like
Hmm.
hierarchy inherent in the ensembles that is so hard to like separate yourself or step away from. And even when
Mm,
there are spaces that are doing a better job of doing that, like people are so skeptical, like, oh, how can you work together without like this person on a podium? Like it's so foreign for
yes.
some people. Um, so yeah, definitely like the cultural perception of music really needs to change. Like we need this paradigm shift. And also, yeah, representation, like you mentioned, it's really, really important for people to see themselves represented. As someone who is a woman who plays a brass instrument, like even my parents were like,
Oof.
why aren't you playing the flute or the clarinet? Or like we put you in piano
Mm,
lessons, and I'm like, I want to play the trombone. Like, I don't know, this is cool. And I'm really grateful because when I was in elementary school, my elementary school teacher was a woman who played trombone. So I was just like, I
mhm,
don't know, I'm just doing it. Like, that's what she's doing. And like, I didn't realize how lucky I was to have that. And then as I grew up and I explored different musical spaces, I saw like, wow, I really am like the outlier, especially in a lot of community groups. Like there's still this kind of like quote unquote old boys club. And like I've been in tons of ensembles where I'm literally
mhm.
the only person of color there in the entire ensemble. Yeah, there's just a lot that needs to change. A lot that can make you feel alienated when some others might be like, this is so cool and welcoming. But the vast majority of us don't feel that welcome. So
What is considered inclusion and representation is deeply relative to a community and to a person. So, like you having this woman who is your teacher who's also playing trombone, like it wasn't even a thought in your mind to not do it. It was like this person is giving me the permission by virtue of just doing it in the first place. So being able to see more of that in classical music spaces, I can only imagine it would just be nourishing, but also would create more accessibility for people to participate in general as well.
yeah, it really makes such a big difference. I was just talking to someone and she was like, "Did you know that my daughter plays trombone?" I was like, "What? That's awesome!" Like like I'm just so happy to hear that people are still. And I was like, "You can tell her everything about me. Tell her every detail about my life. I was like, share everything. Like that's awesome."
What I'm curious about now is if you could share an example of an inclusive arts education space that you've either created or if you've experienced on your own that has actually served and worked with a lot of diverse learners.
Yeah. So again, just want to return to the fact that like I want to give people more grace and then
Yes.
recognize that we're all human. I think oftentimes like educators have a tendency to sort of antagonize students. And like there are definitely some students that are, you know, need some more support and all that, but like students will get up to go to the bathroom and then immediately some teachers might be like they're skipping class or like
Mm,
they are doing this because they hate me or whatever. And it's like, no, sometimes they just need a break. And like I think again, just returning to that, like we're all human. Sometimes we need a break. And it's like, and
mhm.
when you trust students, then they feel a sense of responsibility, and that can really help with creating that relationship in the classroom. There are a couple of groups that I wanted to mention. So going
Yes,
back to
please.
the yeah, going so obviously, first of all, Xenia, so awesome.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
Like all of the fidget toys, all of the oh my God, the therapy dogs. I really feel like I'm nourishing my inner
Best.
child. Like I love therapy dogs. Whenever I see, it was actually something short of a miracle that last time I went to the Schmaltz and Pepper concert that I didn't just burst into tears when I saw the dogs, because that happens very often. More than I like to admit. Especially therapy dogs, like, oh my God, they're so sweet and they're working, they have a job. Also, there's this group called the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra, and it is a group that is made up of completely like people of color. And
Mhm.
normally orchestras, like this is going back to our point about representation, normally orchestras are mostly almost all white. Like
Yes.
it is crazy. So yes, the Sphinx Symphony Orchestra is so awesome because um they are entirely made up of people of color, especially black people, and there
Mhm.
are like so many compounding barriers for people of color and people of marginalized genders to enter
Mhm.
sort of a professional orchestra setting. So it's so awesome that they just went and created that. There's a researcher that I want to shout out. His name is Adam Patrick Bell. He does lots of research on disability and like how can we kind of like modify instruments for people with disabilities. And obviously that has like a lot of benefit to those who are disabled, but also to like normal people, like normal in the eyes of society. Anyway,
Yeah. Normal under ableism.
yeah, there's so many innovations that come out of like trying to create things for those who are disabled. And like when you're trying to appeal to kind of like investors or the higher powers or whatever, that's sometimes the angle that you need to take it from, which like
Yeah.
sometimes can suck, but that's kind of like what's going on. Anyway, he um works with both people in like music and technology and also again people with disabilities. So not just being like, I'm gonna make something and hope it works, but no, like working in conjunction, like cooperatively with these communities. So that's really awesome to see. There's also a man named Peter Worrell. He has like a website, Peter Worrell Instruments, and he makes one-handed instruments like flutes, clarinets, playable with one hand, and it is so cool. Like all the musicians out there, you have to go check them out. Like think about the possibilities. Like there's, I always hear about like, for example, like students, especially younger students, like I don't know, they break their arm all the time, or like they
Yes.
sprain their something, or so or other. So
Hmm.
like just having that be accessible is really awesome. And also the advent of like these sort of like plastic instruments is really really great because it brings the price point all the way down, like we talked about, like so many intersectional things. The socioeconomic status of students can make a huge factor. So if there aren't any instruments at the school, they can maybe buy one, and it's a plastic instrument that still plays just as well, that suits their needs,
Hmm.
and that can kind of be their in to making music. I also wanted to mention that lots of libraries are now having instruments for people to loan, which is so awesome. Like I really cannot stress like how awesome that is.
Hmm.
There's another group called the Canadian Accessible Musical Instruments Network, and they have instruments that are accessible that people can borrow as well. And there's
Wow.
a website that you can visit and all that. So that is super awesome. And the last kind of group that I want to mention is the Viva Singers Toronto. They have many different groups, but they have a group called the Every Voice Matters Chorus. And in this group, there people with disabilities are participating in making music and singing with other people. And the best part is that everyone is receiving one-on-one support. And I think that's something that like there's no one solution for anything, right? But like one-on-one support, like it's really hard to beat that. So, and it's so awesome that like they
Mm.
have that, and um they're able to work together with people with disabilities and with their teaching assistants to create this
Mhm.
ensemble where really like everyone can participate.
I will say the major common denominator that I'm sort of picking up on from what you've shared, but also from like my understanding of all of the people in the orcs is that like each of these people looked at the current state of accessibility with regards to music, with regards to education, with regards to design and innovation and said, like, I'm actually not going to try to get in with whatever y'all have going on. I'm going to go do it my own way.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and they did it, and it works in ways that, like, those things could never truly be possible, and the room and imagination that is required to do that. um, I would say especially for folks who are disabled, really strongly believe that we're constantly creating new worlds in the world that we have. And that
Mm-hmm.
can look like a one-handed instrument for somebody who may be an amputee or somebody who may have limited range of motion and they still need to play an instrument, right? Like these are
Yeah.
innovations that come directly from disabled folks who have that lived experience, but also have that tangible material experience of navigating the world around disability. It's really beautiful. Even like the Sphinx, like group, like orchestra, to think that they were just like, actually, not only are we not going to hang out and play with y'all anymore, we're going to create our own thing. And it's actually going to be really, really wonderful. Like that is really beautiful to me. And it also like demonstrates the necessity for the understanding around disability justice. Because one of the principles of disability justice is that like we actually don't need to be concerned with trying to fit in with a system that wasn't looking out for us. We can actually create a system that is looking out for us from the very beginning. And based off
Mhm.
of what you've shared with me, like you're doing that work, and a lot of these organizations are doing that work in really critical ways after understanding, oh, this is possible. I just can't do it in that place. My next question for you is about like, what would be some of our next steps around, let's say in the next decade, what are some systemic changes that you believe are really necessary to create a truly authentically inclusive arts education space and systems?
I think like with making music, there is like you have making music and then you have kind of like all the other baggage. So again, like
Mhm.
instruments, being able to read music, being able to understand those like Italian terms and all that. And it's like, really, you don't really need to do all of that. Like if you have sang in the shower, like you
Yes.
have made music and that's totally okay. So also like, yeah, one of the systemic changes would just be like changing that definition or like rethinking it or being more flexible with it,
Mhm.
because that can really change the way that performers and also audience members and everyday people think about what music can look like. So
Mhm.
um, there's also lots of merits with learning by ear or like learning by watching someone. And I think that, and also for thousands and thousands of years, time immemorial, lots of indigenous communities have like passed down songs through oral traditions. And that's something
Mhm.
that has existed, um, that only through colonialism and Eurocentrism have we been like, no, that's not real, or like, that's not a legit way to learn music. Like, it's been happening for so long. And like, I think there's lots of like, we need to pay attention to that, obviously, because it's so important. Um, and yeah, I think also the like you don't need the best of the best. Obviously, we would want the best of the best instruments
Mhm.
for all, but again, like no use in kind of like shaming people or like making that barrier so high. Like, hey, you can just like hit something that you have around you, and that's an instrument.
Yes.
And again, there's lots of music that you can make with your own voice, with your body, like body percussion. Um,
Mhm.
and there's lots of music that you can make spontaneously as well. I think some of the best music is music that happens spontaneously, and being okay with that, being okay with making mistakes, with being human. So much of music is like that note is right, that note is wrong, or like
Mhm.
too early, too late, or whatever. But like we're human. How I don't want to like I can listen to a robot play music all day, but like no, I want to listen to the human and like listen to what that person may interpret, what's written on the page or what's not written on the page, and like that emotional connection that they're making. Um, and I think,
Mm.
yeah, definitely, obviously, as a teacher, I'm a little bit biased, but all of that change starts in the schools and starts with supporting your local music programs, to going to your kids' concerts, to listening to them when they say that they want to start lessons, to donating when you can, just supporting in every way possible because everyone, I think people forget that like everyone listens to music. Like everyone, I feel like nowadays we just all always have like earphones or like headphones on, or
Mm-hmm.
even like music isn't just like music in the traditional sense. It also encompasses like sound design and like film music, and all of that is kind of related to how we value the arts versus how we value, like, for example, like science and math and whatnot. Like people have this idea like, oh, to further uh our society, we need to like fund math and STEM field things, but it's like we also need to fund arts and like
Yeah.
visual arts, musical arts, like performing arts, all of that stuff, because that is what allows us to imagine new futures for
Mm.
ourselves and create new possibilities when maybe our world isn't there right now, but at least like in this space that we've created, it exists.
My final question for you is, what are some things that you would like to be included in accessible spaces, that you may think are like lofty ideas, that might be a bit out there, but you think would be really, really important to that change? So an example that I have is a certain accessibility feature that I would have of all spaces in general, would be food. That food would have to be there. People would have to be able to eat or have access to food that feels good for them and that is culturally relevant to them. And also access to like really, really safe ways of getting home and transportation if they need it. Just because that is incredibly hard and feels really unsafe for people. But those are the two like accessibility things that oftentimes aren't really on the table. But I think like if we're thinking 10 years from now, future Toronto, from our perspective, what are some things that you would add as accessibility features to create more accessible art spaces?
Yeah, so really quick to add on to the mention of food and transportation, like oftentimes rehearsals are happening super early in the morning,
Mm,
super late at night, like you just happen to skip breakfast, or like you scarf down some food and then you head to rehearsal late at night. And then also like early in the morning, late at night, like um walking around can be dicey for some people. And I am so, so, so fortunate and grateful for my parents for always driving me to those 7 a.m. rehearsals. Like, I do
mm,
not know what would happen if like they weren't able to do that. We've talked a lot about like instruments and like the spaces, but like you said, like just like food, transportation, everything around it. I think
mhm.
also comfortable seating, stretch breaks.
Talk on it, please.
Like stretching is so important for making music because it's so physical. Like making
Mhm,
music is so physical. It's like a whole body. Like when you're playing wind instruments, you need to be able to take a good breath to be able to like sit up straight, or at least in a way that your lungs aren't compressed.
mhm,
And especially for younger individuals, young people, I always like we would do some stretches before our lessons, and that always helped people like recenter themselves, be more present in the moment. So much of making music is a mental game. And if you're not there mentally, like if you're still thinking about what happened last period or what's happening after school or whatnot, like we
mhm,
can't completely be present. And obviously, like it's hard for people to just like brush things off, but we can do as much as we can to kind of like, close our eyes, take a deep breath, count down from five, like, and just be here together. Um,
mhm.
Comfortable seating, like rehearsals sometimes are happening for hours on end, like 2 or 3 hours with
Yeah.
no breaks. And it's just like, it can be brutal. It can be so brutal. And like some instruments like require you to like hold this position for all of that time. So there are some devices for helping people hold their instruments. For example, for the trombone, there's the ergo bone, and my friend has one. And I was like, oh my gosh, like that. She's like, it really
Mhm,
helps with playing because it takes the pressure off of my arm so I can just like focus more on my air. And I was like, that's great. Like, how much did it cost if I don't mind asking? Like, I interested in getting one. And I think she was like $250 for like this
No.
pole that can hold your instrument. And I was like, oh my God. I was like, obviously good for you that you can do that. Like, awesome.
Love
But
that for
like,
you.
yeah, I
Yeah.
was like thinking of like all the people out there that could benefit from this. And also instruments are like fragile things. Like if I wish I could just tape it to a stick or something. But we do need
You know.
specialized things. And yeah, there's like people out there that are again creating those technologies, but like
Mm,
they're still like they still need to be subsidized and they're still quite expensive and inaccessible, but it is possible. It is like a lot of the problems that we have aren't like partially they are because like there's just ideas that we haven't thought of, but
mm,
most of it is just a matter of like distribution and
yeah.
access. Like it's totally possible if some like billionaire, would be so cool
Hello. Hope you're
to,
watching this.
yeah, if you're watching this,
Doing this.
you have a lot of zeros in your bank account. Like hit us up. We can make some good things happen.
Exactly.
It's just like distributing all that goodness. Like it exists.
Mm,
That's my lofty
absolutely.
idea is for a billionaire to reach out to us.
To be honest, I think that's a lot of our lofty ideas of just like, just show yourself and hand over the
Yes,
money. Thank you
yes.
very much.
Doesn't have
It's
to be a
so
big
true.
deal.
Exactly. It doesn't have to be a big deal. We don't have to tell anybody. Just
Yeah.
make it happen for us. It's fine. And I mean, it also is like, thank you so much. It's such a wonderful answer. And like, to your point, the comfortable seating, I don't think people understand how big of an issue that is. And that I've straight up left events because I'm like, it's not worth it. My body's gonna hate me tomorrow. It's not gonna be worth it.
Mhm.
And but that's also another example of like, which you all the things that you've listed, right, are also about like how are we extending our imagination outside of ourselves and then supporting people from there. But then it also like brings up a really good question of like, in what ways does further accessibility create higher standards of just how we treat each other for even people who aren't disabled yet, right? So like you mentioned at Xenia Concerts, we have our sensory table and we have all the fidgets. The amount of times people arrive there, and like that is also part of like my imagination of like, I really wish almost every event had a sensory table, but the amount of times that at our events, it'll be somebody who's there who may not identify as disabled yet, um, will like start using some of the sensory tools that we have, use the quiet space that we end up having, and they leave the concert or they're bringing back the sensory supports, and they're like, this made me feel really, really good, and I could actually tolerate being here. And I was like, yeah, absolutely. It makes things easier to tolerate. And through that, people also get a better understanding of like, oh, these are my actual needs, and I'm not asking for too much simply because they exist. Which is like, I think for both of us is our one of our biggest lofty goals of accessibility in Toronto for the next 10 years is like, how can more people get their needs met without feeling shame about it in the process, you know?
Yeah, like it's hard for people to enjoy music again, like if they're hungry or if they were freezing coming in from their commute or if they just need something to fidget with. Like it
Mhm.
is, it's one thing to be like, I want everyone to love music and like to make music, but then it's like, then what are you doing about it? Like,
There we go.
what can
Yeah.
you, like, how are you helping those people? How are you supporting them? Like,
Hmm.
just thinking about again those steps and ways that we can accommodate others to make them feel comfortable. Yeah.
Absolutely. Thank you so much, Vanessa. This was wonderful. It's such a wonderful time chatting with you. We're so grateful at Xenia that you took the time to share like your brilliance, everything that you've learned, so much of like how you've arrived at it and your particular perspective. Because it's really, really necessary. And it's also part of like how we actively do the work of changing what accessibility looks like within the arts, but just also across the board when we're thinking about music performance, music presentation, producing arts education in general.
Everything in like these people are so awesome. Yeah, I'm
Thank
also
you so
excited
much.
to like watch all the other interviews from the other members. So
Thank you so much to everyone for joining us. Please feel free to subscribe to our channel as well as to click notifications. I feel like such a YouTuber right now.
click
But
that
it would
like
be
button.
exactly click that little button. We're gonna have a bunch of links down below for all of the different resources we talked about and referenced today. We'll also have a bit of a glossary for the jargon and the different things that we referenced today, just so everyone can stay in the loop. Yeah, and I'm really excited to see y'all the next time. We have our next expert interview for the Accessibility Accelerator. Yeah, thank you, everyone.
Stop, you can let it go. Take a step back, let the feeling flow. Look around, feel the ground. Love will make its way around. You may not
A really special thank you to Jennery for our beautiful intro and outro song entitled Stop, You Can Let It Go. We're so grateful that we get to share her work with you. We'd also like to thank our funders for the Accessibility Accelerator, the Canada Council for the Arts, the Toronto Arts Council, and the Israeli Foundation for their generous support. To find out more about Xenia Concerts and what we do, hop on over to our website, follow us on Instagram using the handle Xenia Concerts, or you can look us up on Facebook.